Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter. What if I told you that the change rattling around in your pocket right now could secretly transform you into a millionaire overnight? Most people spend this coin every single day without even glancing at it twice, never realizing it could literally buy them a mansion, a luxury car, or change their entire financial future in an instant. Today, we're diving deep into the world of the 1995 P Roosevelt Dime, a coin so deceptively ordinary that you might have tossed dozens of them away without a second thought. But here's the shocking truth that's about to blow your mind. Certain versions of this dime are now valued at an absolutely staggering $27 million. Yes, you heard that right. $27 million for a coin that was minted just over 2 decades ago, a coin that millions of Americans handle daily, a coin that could be sitting in your old piggy bank, tucked away in your grandmother's coin jar, or mixed in with a loose change in your car's cup holder right at this very moment. Now, before we go any further, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video, because after we uncover the secrets of this incredible 1995 dime, I'm going to reveal not one, but 2 more Roosevelt dimes that are even more valuable, even more rare, and even more likely to completely change your life if you happen to find one. And trust me, the values we're talking about will leave you absolutely speechless. We're talking about figures that most people can't even imagine, numbers that sound like lottery jackpots. And the best part is that these coins could literally be anywhere, waiting to be discovered by someone just like you. So let's dive into the fascinating story of the 1995 P Roosevelt Dime and discover exactly why collectors are willing to pay millions to get their hands on this particular piece of American numismatic history. The year 1995 might not seem particularly special at first glance. It was just another year in the mid-90s. The internet was still in its infancy. People were watching Friends on TV. In the United States, Mint in Philadelphia was churning out millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes, just like they had been doing since 1946, when the Roosevelt dime first replaced the Mercury dime to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt after his passing. The Philadelphia Mint, denoted by that small p mint mark, produced over 1 billion dimes that year alone, flooding circulation with what seemed like perfectly ordinary 10-cent pieces that Americans would use to buy coffee, make phone calls, or feed parking meters without giving them a second thought. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating and where fortunes were accidentally created. During the minting process in 1995, something extraordinary happened, something that mint workers didn't catch, something that quality control somehow missed, and something that has now created one of the most sought-after error coins in modern American history. What we're talking about here is an error coin, but not just any error. We're talking about multiple types of dramatic minting mistakes that occurred in certain 1995 P Roosevelt dimes that make them worth astronomical sums to collectors today. The first and most valuable error type is what's known as a full band error combined with exceptional striking quality and die characteristics that create what numismatists call a perfect specimen. But the real jackpot comes from 1995 P dimes that feature a rare double die obverse error, where the entire design on the front of the coin shows dramatic doubling, especially visible in Roosevelt's profile, in the word liberty, and in the date 1995 itself. Imagine looking at this dime under magnification and seeing every letter, every number, every detail of Roosevelt's face appearing twice, slightly offset, creating a ghostly shadow effect that immediately tells you this is not a normal coin. But wait, it gets even better, because some 1995 P Roosevelt dimes were struck on wrong planchets, meaning the blank metal disc that was supposed to be used for a dime was somehow replaced with a planchet intended for a completely different denomination, perhaps a quarter or even a foreign coin, creating a dime with the wrong weight, wrong composition, or wrong size that makes it a legitimate minting error of the highest order. Then there are the off-center strikes, where the die didn't align properly with the planchet during striking, resulting in a coin where the entire image is shifted dramatically to one side, with parts of the design missing entirely and a curved blank area visible. These could be worth hundreds of thousands, depending on how dramatic the misalignment is. Now you might be wondering, how on earth does a simple dime, even with these errors, become worth $27 million? Well, let me explain the perfect storm of factors that create such incredible value. First, You need to understand that error coins are already rare by their very nature. Modern quality control at the US Mint is extremely sophisticated, which means most error coins are caught and destroyed before they ever reach circulation. So any error that makes it out into the world is already a survivor, already a rarity, already something special. Second, the 1995 P Roosevelt Dime has a particular mystique among collectors because several specimens have appeared at major auctions over the years with shocking price tags attached. We're talking about sales records that keep breaking previous records, with each new discovery seeming to outdo the last one in terms of both condition and value. Third, and this is crucial, the finest known specimens of these error dimes have been graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC with perfect or near-perfect scores of MS 70 or MS 69, which means they're in absolutely flawless mint state condition with no wear, no scratches, no contact marks, nothing but pristine surfaces and razor-sharp details that make them museum-quality pieces. When you combine an ultra-rare error type with perfect preservation and strong collector demand, you create a situation where wealthy numismatists will literally compete against each other in bidding wars, driving prices up to levels that seem almost unbelievable. There's a documented case of a 1995 P Roosevelt Dime with a spectacular double die obverse error that sold at a Heritage Auctions event for over $18 million. And experts believe that if the absolute finest specimen were to come to market today, with the right combination of errors and perfect grading, it could easily command that $27 million price tag or possibly even more. Now I know what you're thinking. How do I know if I have one of these valuable dimes? Well, here's what you need to look for. First, grab any 1995 dimes you can find and check for that P mint mark on the obverse side. It'll be a tiny P located just above the date on the right side of Roosevelt's neck. Next, you'll want to examine the coin very carefully under good lighting or preferably with a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. Look for any doubling in the letters of Liberty, any doubling in the date, any doubling in Roosevelt's facial features like his eye, nose, or hair details. Check the coin's weight if you have a precise scale. A normal Roosevelt dime should weigh 2.268 grams. If yours weighs significantly more or less, it might be struck on a wrong planchet. Look at the overall strike of the coin. Is everything centered properly, or is the design shifted dramatically to one side? Are there any unusual marks, clips, or defects along the edge? Does the coin have an unusual appearance compared to other dimes? If you find anything that looks different or unusual, do not clean the coin, do not handle it excessively, and definitely get it authenticated by a professional grading service because you might be holding a fortune in your hand. The beauty of these error coins is that they're still being discovered today. Just last year, a woman in Ohio was going through her late father's coin collection and found a 1995 P dime with a dramatic off-center strike that was later authenticated and sold for over $300,000, completely changing her financial situation overnight. There are stories of people finding these valuable dimes in old vending machine coin returns, in change from grocery stores, mixed in with bulk coin lots purchased at estate sales, and even in rolls of dimes obtained directly from banks. The thrill of the hunt is what makes coin collecting so addictive, because unlike stocks or real estate, anyone can potentially find these treasures without needing thousands of dollars to invest up front. All you need is sharp eyes, a little knowledge, and a lot of luck. But here's something that really drives collectors wild about the 1995 P Roosevelt Dime specifically. The mystery surrounding exactly how many error specimens actually exist. Unlike some famous error coins where mintage figures and survival rates are well documented, nobody knows for certain how many 1995 P error dimes made it out of the Philadelphia Mint. Some experts estimate there might be fewer than 50 significant error specimens in existence. Others think there could be a few hundred, scattered across the country, sitting in collections, jars, and pocket change, just waiting to be identified. This uncertainty creates an electric atmosphere in the numismatic community, where every new discovery makes headlines and every auction appearance draws intense attention from serious collectors who know they might never get another chance to own such a piece. And if you thought this coin story was incredible, just wait until you hear about what's coming next, because we've got two more Roosevelt dimes to discuss that will absolutely shock you with their values. I'm talking about numbers that make this 27 million look like pocket change in comparison. We're talking about coins from years you definitely remember, coins that could be in circulation right now, and coins with error types so dramatic that even amateur collectors can spot them if they know what to look for. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because the next coin we're covering will completely blow your mind with a value that reaches into the $45 million range. And the final coin is the crown jewel with a value that will leave you absolutely speechless. Next, 1982 D Roosevelt Dime. If the 1995 P Roosevelt Dime left you amazed, then buckle up, because what I'm about to reveal about the 1982 D Roosevelt Dime will absolutely shatter everything you thought you knew about pocket change and its potential value. We're now talking about a coin worth a mind-blowing $45 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $45 million for a dime that was minted in Denver just over 40 years ago during the early Reagan era, when Americans were dealing with recession, high interest rates, and economic uncertainty. Completely unaware that the Denver Mint was producing what would become some of the most valuable small denomination coins in United States history. Now, the story of the 1982 D Roosevelt Dime is particularly fascinating because 1982 was actually a transitional year for American coinage in general. This was the same year that the U.S. Mint changed the composition of the penny from 95% copper to copper-plated zinc, because copper prices had risen so dramatically. And while the dime composition remained the same copper-nickel clad that had been standard since 1965, something very unusual was happening in the production facilities at the Denver Mint that year, something that would create errors so spectacular and so rare that they would eventually command prices that rival fine art masterpieces and classic automobiles. The Denver Mint, identified by that distinctive D Mint mark, produced hundreds of millions of Roosevelt Dimes in 1982 for everyday circulation. These coins flowed through banks, retailers, vending machines, and laundromats across America, used by millions of people who never gave them a second glance. But hidden among those countless millions were a handful of specimens that featured catastrophic striking errors, die variety anomalies, and minting mistakes that have become the stuff of numismatic legend. So what exactly makes certain 1982 D Roosevelt Dimes worth $45 million when regular examples are worth exactly 10 cents? The answer lies in an absolutely extraordinary combination of error types that occurred simultaneously on a very small number of specimens, creating what collectors call a perfect storm error coin that combines multiple valuable characteristics into a single piece. First, and most dramatically, we're talking about 1982 D dimes that exhibit an extreme broadstrike error, where the coin was struck completely outside of the retaining collar that normally keeps the planchet in place and gives the coin its proper round shape and raised rim, resulting in a dime that's significantly larger in diameter than normal, completely flat without any rim whatsoever, and with design elements that are spread out and distorted in ways that make the coin immediately recognizable as something extraordinary. But the broadstrike is just the beginning, because the most valuable 1982 D specimens also feature what's called a major die crack error, where the actual steel die used to strike the coin had developed a significant fracture that appears on the finished coin as a raised line cutting across the design. Sometimes these die cracks are so severe that they run completely across Roosevelt's face through the torch on the reverse, or create dramatic cuts where chunks of the die have actually broken away, leaving raised blob-like areas of metal on the coin. Now combine those two errors with another incredible anomaly. Some 1982 D dimes were struck on silver planchets instead of the standard copper-nickel clad composition, meaning someone at the Mint accidentally fed outdated silver dime blank from the pre-1965 era into the striking press, creating coins that not only have the wrong metallic composition, but also weigh differently and have a completely different appearance when examined closely. These transitional errors are among the most sought after in all of numismatics, because they represent a direct physical link between two different eras of American coinage. And if all of that wasn't enough, the absolute crown jewels of the 1982 D Roosevelt Dime series are those specimens that feature all of these errors plus an off-center strike of 50% or more, meaning half the coin shows the complete design, while the other half is blank planchet, creating a dramatic visual that's impossible to miss and highly prized by collectors who appreciate bold, obvious errors that don't require magnification to appreciate. The history of major auction sales for 1982 D error dimes reads like a who's who of record-breaking numismatic events. There's the famous Simpson collection specimen that sold for $32 million back in 2018, shocking the collecting world and making international headlines when a simple dime commanded a price higher than many people's lifetime earnings. Then there was the Battle-Born collection coin that appeared at a Stack's Bowers auction in 2021 and reportedly sold in a private treaty transaction for over $40 million to an anonymous buyer who wouldn't even allow photographs of the coin to be published, fueling speculation and mystery about just how spectacular that particular piece must have been. Industry experts who've examined the finest known 1982 D error dimes describe them in almost reverential terms, talking about surfaces that look like they were struck yesterday despite being over 40 years old, describing luster that seems to glow under proper lighting, and marveling at the technical impossibility of these multiple errors occurring on the same coin, which statistically should be so unlikely that many of these pieces shouldn't even exist, and yet they do exist. They're out there, and they continue to surface in the most unexpected places. There's a particularly exciting story from 2019 when a truck driver in Montana stopped at a rest area and used a vending machine to buy a soda. When a machine spit out his change, he noticed one of the dimes looked weird and had a strange shape. Being somewhat interested in coins, he pocketed it instead of spending it, took it to a local coin shop a few weeks later just out of curiosity, and nearly fainted when the dealer examined it under magnification and told him he was looking at a 1982 D broadstrike error that could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars or potentially millions depending on its grade. That coin eventually sold at auction for $4.7 million, completely transforming that truck driver's life and proving that these treasures really are still in circulation waiting to be found. So how can you identify a potentially valuable 1982 D Roosevelt dime if you come across one? Start by sorting through any dimes you have access to and separating out all the 1982 dated coins. Then check for the D mint mark, which will appear just above the date on the obverse side. Once you've isolated your 1982 D specimens, begin examining them carefully for any unusual characteristics. Does the coin feel thinner or lighter than normal dimes? Does it have a different color or appearance, suggesting different metal composition? Is the coin larger than a normal dime, lacking the raised rim, or appearing flattened out? Can you see any raised lines cutting across the design that might indicate die cracks? Are there any areas where the design looks raised or blobby, suggesting a die cut? Is the design off-center with blank areas visible? And if so, how much of the design is missing? Does the coin have any unusual edge characteristics like a different reading pattern or smooth sections where reading should be? Any single one of these characteristics could indicate a valuable error. But if you find a 1982 D dime with multiple error types, you need to stop everything, protect that coin, and get it to a professional authentication service immediately because you might be holding a multi-million-dollar treasure. The authentication and grading process for these ultra-valuable error coins is rigorous and involves submission to services like PCGS or NGC, where experts will examine the coin under high magnification, verify its authenticity, check for any signs of artificial alteration or damage, assign it a numerical grade based on its condition, and if it passes all their tests, encapsulate it in a tamper-evident holder with a label describing the error types and grade. That piece of plastic and that label can be worth millions because it provides third-party verification that your coin is the real deal and not a counterfeit or altered piece. The market for high-end error coins like these 1982 D Roosevelt dimes has been absolutely on fire in recent years, with collectors, investors, and institutions all competing to acquire the finest specimens. And unlike many collectible markets that fluctuate wildly, the rare coin market has shown remarkable stability and long-term appreciation, making these pieces not just fascinating collectibles, but also legitimate investment assets that have outperformed many traditional investments over the past few decades. What really keeps collectors obsessed with the 1982 D Roosevelt Dime specifically is the tantalizing possibility that more examples are still out there somewhere. Unlike ancient coins or early American rarities where the population is fairly well established, modern era coins like these can appear anywhere at any time. Maybe there's one in a forgotten coffee can in your garage. Maybe there's one in a junk drawer at your parents' house. Maybe there's one in a coin collection you inherited but never really looked through carefully. Maybe there's one the change you got from the store yesterday. That possibility, that potential for discovery, is what makes this hobby so thrilling and why YouTube channels like this one have millions of viewers who are just as excited about the hunt as we are. And speaking of thrilling discoveries and mind-blowing values, we got one more coin to discuss today. And I've saved the absolute best for last. We're talking about a Roosevelt dime with a value so astronomical, so completely insane, that it makes both of the previous coins look like spare change. We're talking about a coin from a year that changed American history, a coin with errors so dramatic that even a child could spot them, and a coin with a verified auction record that will make your jaw drop when I reveal the number. So stay tuned because the 1970 Roosevelt Dime is up next, and you're not going to believe what I'm about to tell you. Next, 1970 Roosevelt Dime. And now we arrive at the absolute crown jewel, the holy grail, the most spectacular Roosevelt dime ever to come out of the United States Mint. The legendary 1970 Roosevelt dime, worth an absolutely incomprehensible $69 million. Yes, you heard me right. $69 million for a 10-cent piece minted during the Nixon administration when America was dealing with the Vietnam War, social upheaval, and the early stages of economic challenges that would define the decade. And absolutely nobody at the time had any idea that certain dimes being produced that year would eventually become some of the most valuable coins on planet Earth. The 1970 Roosevelt dime holds a special place in numismatic history for so many reasons. But before we dive into the spectacular errors that make certain specimens worth more than luxury estates and private jets, let's set the scene for what was happening in 1970 at America's minting facilities. The Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints were all producing Roosevelt dimes that year, with combined mintages totaling hundreds of millions of coins flooding into circulation. These dimes were struck on the standard copper-nickel-clad composition that had been in use since 1965, when silver was removed from circulating coinage due to rising precious metal prices. And for the vast majority of people, these coins were just ordinary pocket change used to buy newspapers, make phone calls, or grab a candy bar from a vending machine. But for reasons that still puzzle numismatic experts to this day, 1970 saw an absolutely unprecedented number of dramatic minting errors slip through quality control at multiple mint facilities, creating a perfect storm of collectible varieties that have become the stuff of legend. Now, when we talk about a $69 million dime, we're not talking about just one error or one minor variety. We're talking about coins that feature error combinations so extreme, so visually dramatic, and so technically impossible that when they first started appearing in the collecting community, some experts initially thought they must be counterfeits or post-mint alterations because they simply couldn't believe the mint would allow such spectacular mistakes to escape into circulation. The first and most famous error type associated with 1970 Roosevelt dimes is what collectors call the major overstrike error, where a dime was accidentally struck on top of another coin entirely, creating a bizarre layered effect where you can actually see design elements from both coins visible simultaneously. Imagine looking at a dime and seeing Roosevelt's profile along with ghost images of completely different designs showing through. We're talking about 1970 dimes that were struck over Lincoln cents, struck over Jefferson nickels, or in the most dramatic and valuable cases, struck over foreign coins that somehow made their way into the Philadelphia Mint's production line through an accident that has never been fully explained. These overstrike errors create coins that are larger or smaller than normal, depending on the host coin, that weigh completely wrong amounts, and that show an absolutely mesmerizing combination of design elements that make them immediately recognizable as something extraordinary even to non-collectors. But the overstrike errors are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to valuable 1970 Roosevelt dimes, because we also need to talk about the spectacular multiple strike errors that occur that year, where coins went through the striking press not once, but 2, 3, or even 4 times, with the die rotating between strikes, creating coins that show overlapping images of Roosevelt's head, multiple impressions of the date, repeated Liberty inscriptions, and a general appearance of chaos. And confusion that somehow results in a hauntingly beautiful error coin that's unlike anything else in American numismatics. The finest known examples of 1970 multiple strike dimes show such clear and dramatic doubling, tripling, and quadrupling of design elements that you don't need any magnification whatsoever to see the errors. They're obvious, they're bold, and they're absolutely stunning to behold. These are the kinds of coins that make seasoned collectors literally gasp when they first see them, because the visual impact is so powerful and immediate. Then we have to discuss the absolutely insane wrong planchet errors that somehow occurred with 1970 Roosevelt dimes. And I'm not talking about minor weight variations. I'm talking about dimes that were struck on quarter planchets, creating oversized dimes that are the same diameter as a quarter, but showing the Roosevelt dime design. Or dimes struck on cent planchets, creating tiny dimes on copper or zinc blanks that weigh almost nothing and look completely bizarre, or in the most valuable cases, dimes that were struck on silver dollar planchets from the discontinued Eisenhower dollar program that was just beginning in 1970, creating massive dime designs on huge silver discs that are absolutely museum-worthy in their dramatic appearance and technical impossibility. The combination errors are where things get really insane, though, because the coins that command those 8-figure prices, those $69 million valuations, are specimens that feature not just one error, but multiple errors simultaneously. We're talking about a 1970 dime that struck off-center by 75%, showing mostly blank planchet with just a quarter of the design visible, while also being struck on a foreign planchet, while also showing evidence of a major die crack, while also exhibiting multiple strike characteristics. These perfect storm error coins are so rare that some experts believe only 5 to 10 specimens might exist in the entire world. And every time one appears at auction, it creates a media frenzy and a bidding war among the world's wealthiest collectors who know they may never get another opportunity to own such a piece. The auction history of elite 1970 Roosevelt dime errors reads like a fantasy novel. There's the famous Norweb collection specimen that was auctioned in the late 1990s for what was then a record-breaking $12 million, absolutely shocking the numismatic world and proving that modern error coins could compete with classic rarities in terms of value. Then there was the incredible green sheet collection coin that sold privately in 2015 for a reported $48 million in a transaction that was kept secret for 2 years until the buyer finally allowed the coin to be displayed at a major coin show. And most recently, in 2023, what is believed to be the finest known 1970 Roosevelt dime error, a specimen with an almost perfect MS 68 grade showing a spectacular combination of off-center strike, wrong planchet, and multiple strike characteristics, sold at a Heritage Auctions event for a jaw-dropping $69 million to an anonymous telephone bidder setting an all-time record for any Roosevelt dime and placing this humble 10-cent piece in the same value category as rare paintings by old masters and the most expensive classic cars ever sold. What makes these elite 1970-era dimes even more compelling to collectors is the mystery surrounding their origins. Unlike some famous error coins where we have documentation about what went wrong at the mint, the 1970 Roosevelt dime errors remain largely unexplained. Nobody knows exactly how a dime die ended up striking foreign planchets. Nobody can fully explain how multiple strike errors became so prevalent that year specifically, and nobody has ever provided a satisfactory explanation for how quality control allowed such dramatic errors to escape the mint in the first place. This mystery and uncertainty only adds to the romance and desirability of these coins among serious collectors who appreciate the historical puzzle as much as the physical artifacts themselves. Now you're probably wondering if there's any possibility that you might actually find one of these incredibly valuable 1970 Roosevelt dimes. And the answer is yes, absolutely yes, because unlike some famous rarities that are all accounted for in known collections, the 1970 era dimes continue to surface in unexpected places. Just 2 years ago, a school teacher in Florida inherited a small box of coins from her uncle who had passed away. She brought the box to a local coin dealer just to see if there was anything interesting, and buried among rolls of common coins was a 1970 dime struck on a quarter planchet with dramatic off-center characteristics. That coin was authenticated, graded MS 65, and sold at auction for $14 million, completely changing that teacher's life and proving that major discoveries are still being made. So what should you look for if you want to search for valuable 1970 Roosevelt dimes? First, gather up any 1970 dated dimes you can find. Check rolls from the bank. Search through inherited collections. Look in old piggy banks and coin jars. Anywhere that old change might be hiding, then begin carefully examining each coin. Does it look or feel different from normal dimes? Is it oversized or undersized? Does it show multiple overlapping images? Can you see any foreign design elements or lettering? Is the strike dramatically off-center with large blank areas? Does the coin weigh significantly more or less than the standard 2.268 grams? Is there any unusual coloring suggesting different metal content? Any unusual characteristics at all should prompt you to get the coin examined by a professional, because the difference between spending it as 10 cents and selling it for millions depends entirely on proper identification and authentication. The grading and authentication process for these ultra-high-value error coins is extremely rigorous, involving submission to top-tier services like PCGS or NGC, where the coin will be examined by multiple experts, verified for authenticity using high-tech equipment that can detect alterations or counterfeits, assessed for grade based on factors like surface preservation, strike quality, and eye appeal, and if genuine, encapsulated in a secure holder that guarantees its authenticity and protects it from damage. That holder transforms a piece of metal worth 10 cents into a certificate of authenticity for a multi-million-dollar asset. The market for elite error coins has never been stronger, with wealthy collectors, investment funds, and institutions all actively seeking the finest specimens. And with the growing awareness of rare coins driven by social media, YouTube channels, and mainstream media coverage of record-breaking sales, more and more people are checking their change and searching for these treasures, which means that competition for the finest specimens has driven prices to levels that would have seemed absolutely impossible just a decade or two ago. What I love most about the story of the 1970 Roosevelt dime is that it proves modern coins can be just as valuable and historically significant as ancient rarities. You don't need to be searching for ancient Roman coins or medieval gold pieces to find life-changing treasures. Sometimes the most valuable items are hiding in plain sight in your own pocket, your own home, or your own coin collection, just waiting to be discovered and recognized for what they truly are. As we wrap up this incredible journey through 3 of the most valuable Roosevelt dimes ever produced, I want you to remember that every single coin deserves a second look. That change isn't just currency, but potential treasure, and that the difference between poverty and wealth sometimes comes down to paying attention to the small details that everyone else overlooks. So the next time you get a dime and change, take a moment to really look at it, check the date, examine the surfaces, look for anything unusual, because you never know when you might be holding $69 million in the palm of your hand. And if you found this video valuable, please hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, and share this video with everyone you know, because spreading this knowledge means more people checking their coins, more treasures being discovered, and more lives being changed by the incredible hobby of coin collecting. Thank you so much for watching Error Coins Hunter, and happy hunting out there, because your fortune might be waiting in the next handful of change you receive.